time no talk. Not really, but long time no sit down talk. I feel like I haven't done a sit down video in so long, and I'm hoping to do more of these, especially since I'm doing Vlogmas this year. Today's topic of interest is something that I get asked all the time. I have touched on this topic previously, but it is also kind of changing throughout the years, so I figured I'd do an update on it. This video is gonna be all about the holidays and custody schedules. Specifically, I'm obviously going to be talking about my personal custody schedules that I have with my children. If you guys are new here, hi, my name is Jess. I have kind of a complicated life. How do you put this in a way that doesn't sound terrible? I have 3 different custody schedules that my family is currently juggling. I have a daughter with my high school sweetheart, basically. We are no longer together. Obviously, we do have a court order in place. Then I have 3 children with my ex-husband, but on top of those 2 custody schedules, we're also dealing with a custody schedule with my husband's children. Yeah, it gets complicated. I also grew up in a divorced, broken family, some people call it, although I don't feel like any part of it was ever truly broken. So I feel like I have some experience, in every single situation. I'm gonna be touching on my opinions on this topic. I'm gonna be touching on what my current custody schedules are for the holidays, and we'll go from there. Let's get started. There are several different ways that you can go about having a holiday custody schedule. Ultimately, it's gonna come down to the 2 parents and if they can agree on what is best for that particular child or children. What is best for one family is going to look very different, or can look very different, than what is best for another family. Probably the most common custody arrangement that people have during the holidays, if they cannot agree on anything mutually, is every other holiday, every other year. I think that's generally what courts, from what I've seen, suggest. What that usually looks like on paper in my experience is it will have all of the holidays written out. Easter, Christmas, Halloween, 4th of July, any day. Sometimes they'll add in the kids' birthdays, and that'll be one of them, and they will label it even years and odd years. For example, in the even years, it'll have labeled that mother gets the child for this holiday, and this holiday. And then in the odd years, dad will get the child on those holidays. So they'll switch out every other year. The way that it's worked for me is that we split up Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. But again, this can look different depending on the family. Another way that some families do this is that they will actually split every single holiday. So instead of switching off every other year, mom gets Christmas, dad gets Christmas, sometimes they'll split it down the middle. They'll say, okay, mom gets Christmas from 8 a.m. to noon, and dad gets Christmas from noon to 4 p.m. Again, this all just depends on what the parents are able to agree on is best for the child. Another way that this could look is that some parents will split holiday weekends. The children will get to spend longer periods of time with the parents. So instead of just getting Easter Day, they'll get entire Easter weekend, and so on and so forth. Typically, you'll see that with families who live far away from each other. I'll get into this, but that's basically the schedule that we have with Tommy and Kaden, is that we get them for long periods of time rather than just Thanksgiving Day. We get the whole Thanksgiving break. Another way that some families decide to do it is together. Some co-parents decide that it's best to have their families together for holidays, even if they're no longer together, sometimes even if they don't even get along. If you've been following me and my situation for a while, then you know that this is what happens with me and Lilia's dad. We get along great. A lot of the time we spend our holidays together. I'd say the majority of the time we spend our holidays together, and that works out really well for us. And although that is ideal for some people, I want to remind you to not put yourself in any situation that either party is not comfortable with. If either parent is uncomfortable, that's going to cause tension, and children can pick up on that, guys. They're smart. If the 2 families can't get along, there's no reason to make them. I feel like I was lucky enough to have 2 Christmases every year, 2 birthdays every year, 2 Easters every year. I know that does not sound ideal for everybody, but growing up, I had a great experience. I got double everything. Ultimately, if the parents cannot agree on something, the courts will decide for you. Trust me, they will. So it's best that the 2 families can just figure it out and decide what is more important to each family member. Another way that some people do it is if one parent has a very specific holiday that's very special to them and not so important to the other one, then that parent will get every holiday. Me and Gabe used to do this with Lilia. I would get every Halloween and he would get every 4th of July. Me and my family did more Halloween stuff, and his family kind of didn't at the time, and then his family always did something 4th of July related, and so I never really had her on 4th of July. Now that's kind of changed. We pretty much always spend all of it together. That's just an example of what could happen also. So getting into what exactly my custody schedule looks like, I'm gonna start with the first one. With Lilia, we still have a court order in place back from 2011, I want to say, is when we finally went to court to get stuff written on paper. Me and Gabe didn't always get along, and that might be kind of surprising to some of you guys because we get along super well now. The split was very mutual. It wasn't nasty or dirty. There wasn't any like hatefulness. We really honestly just kind of grew apart. There was a little tension at first, but I think that was honestly because we were both kind of immature. We were 18. So for a while there was tension, and we just strictly went off of the court order. Since then, our court order's kind of gone out the window. We don't follow it hardly at all. Typically what we'll do is kind of play it by ear, but 90% of the time we spend our holidays together. The only holiday that we really stick to by the court order, I think, is Christmas. Every other Christmas, every other year, we will switch off with Lilia. It's kind of stayed that way consistently. We've never really done anything different. So what that looks like is the first parent will get her on Christmas Eve, have her overnight until Christmas morning, and then the second parent will pick her up Christmas morning and keep her all of Christmas Day and overnight until the 26th. That used to be really hard for me. To spend Christmas without your children is probably one of the hardest things that anybody has to deal with. Personally, for me, it was really hard. My suggestion to you is to get creative. There have been multiple days where we will celebrate Christmas on a completely different day. For example, in the past, when he got her Christmas Eve to Christmas Day, I would celebrate my Christmas on the 23rd. Santa knows where you live. Santa's gonna find you, and Santa knows if you have split parents. So I would always explain to her, Santa knows that you're gonna be at your dad's house this day, and Santa knows that you're going to be celebrating Christmas on this day. Santa will bring you his presents here on this day and there on another day. That's one way to go about it. But I know sometimes Santa just comes to both households on the same day, and when the child comes home on Christmas morning, Santa will have come, and that's that. So like I said, it looks different, but that's kind of what it's been for me with Lilia. As for the boys, originally our agreement said the same exact thing as what Lilia's did. It said every other holiday, every other year. After the first year trial run of that, it wasn't working. Our entire custody schedule like 3 or 4 years ago is completely different than it is now. I do have full physical custody, full legal custody of all 3 boys, and there is no holiday schedule. What we've discussed is that whenever he wants to have them, I will let him have them. Every year that looks different. Some years no visits happen, and some years they do, and I always encourage it. It just depends, and there's no guilt, there's no shade. It's just literally whatever works out. If he does something with his family and he asks for them, absolutely, you can have them. I do want them to have a relationship with him. So when it comes to the holidays, whatever days we're not busy and we're not doing something, those are completely open for him to step forward and ask them on that day. Doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen, but you have to put bitterness aside, you have to put your personal feelings aside, and you have to do what's best for those kids. And I will never discourage my kids to have a relationship with their biological father. And I know that can get icky. That can get kind of controversial at times, but that's kind of my view on it. I never want to be viewed as the person who wouldn't let them go over there. If people want to shower my kids with gifts, please go right ahead. More the merrier. Basically, there just is no custody schedule. It's whatever I allow to happen, which is whatever he wants, basically. Moving on to Tommy and Caden, that is a very specific outline custody schedule. I'm not going to go into all of it. I'm just gonna stick to the holidays and the time that we do have. Every single Mother's Day they spend with their mother. Every single Father's Day they spend with their father. That's generally typical too with any custody arrangement. We do get every single Thanksgiving holiday because it falls on a school break, and they do live 6 hours away. Any long periods of time that they have off from school, we typically get that time. So up to this point, we always get them on Thanksgiving. Their winter break is the only major school break that we actually split. Every other year, we switch off the first half of winter break and the second half of winter break. This year, for example, we have them the second half of Christmas break. So we will pick them up like the day after Christmas or something like that. It also varies every single year. Some days we will get both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and other years we won't get them on either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. It's worked out to a T. It's very specifically written, and that's pretty much exactly what we follow. Of course, any other like mutual agreement that the two parties can come up with will always supersede the court agreement. You don't have to, just because you have a court agreement does not mean that you have to follow that. The two parents can agree that there's something better for the child, then that, like, by all means, that is what you should do. And I feel like with all 3 of the situations, all parties involved are really good at that now. Of course, there's lots of hurt and feelings when there's a split up. There pretty much always is. You have to realize how to get past that and how to make sure that everybody is putting the child's best interest first. And I think that's something that we have finally all pretty much mastered. We're not perfect, don't get me wrong. There are times where there are disagreements, and if there are disagreements, then it basically just rolls back onto that court order, which I highly highly recommend, if you split up with your partner, to get a custody schedule in order. It always sounds great. Oh, we're gonna get along, we're not gonna be those parents, we're not gonna fight. You want something to roll back on. You do not have to follow it, but I highly suggest getting something written on paper just in case. If you don't know, custody schedules vary depending on the county that you live in. I've noticed that the county that Tommy and Caden's is written up in is very different and very thorough, and I like that personally, and ours is not so thorough. Also, depending on what state you live in, it's gonna be very different, look very different. Overall, just remember that holidays are stressful enough. Putting a custody schedule on top of that makes it even more confusing and stressful. Sometimes you just have to swallow the pill and realize that what's best for the child isn't necessarily what's best for you. Ultimately, a relationship with both sides of the family is ideal. I think I pretty much covered at least what we do on our holiday schedule. If anybody has any questions, I am so down to answer those. Go ahead and ask those in the comments below, or you can tweet me. Make sure you also follow me on Instagram, and I will link my Facebook down in the description as well. Also, if you have any video suggestions, you guys can leave those down there as well. And that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.